My parents abandoned me at birth, then smiled at my $7 will reading. The Colonel's briefcase ended that fast. I was 3 days old, and they left me on my aunt's doorstep. No note, no explanation. Just a baby wrapped in a faded yellow blanket, left in the November cold like an afterthought. Like a mistake they needed to disappear. My name is Laura Brown, and for 27 years, I built a life out of the rubble of being unwanted. My Aunt Margaret never asked for a child. She was a sharp, brilliant woman who had spent her entire adult life building a real estate empire and a private security consulting company from absolute zero. She wore blazers to breakfast, read financial reports for fun, and had a laugh that could fill an entire room. She was also the only person on this earth who ever made me feel like I was worth something. She never called me a burden, not once. Instead, she called me her greatest investment. She put me through the best schools, pushed me toward discipline, structure, and excellence. When I joined the military at 22, she stood in the front row at my commissioning ceremony with tears running down her face and a flag pin on her lapel. She was prouder of me than any biological parent could have ever been. And I was proud to serve. 8 years of active duty, 2 overseas deployments, a chest full of ribbons, and a spine made of something most people never find. I was a soldier. I was Laura Brown, and I was nobody's victim. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was stationed at Fort Bragg when my aunt's personal assistant reached me. Her voice was soft and careful, the kind of tone people use when they're delivering news that cannot be softened no matter how gently it's wrapped. Aunt Margaret had passed away in her sleep. Peaceful, they said, no suffering. I sat on the edge of my bunk and stared at the floor for a long time. The woman who had saved my life without ever being asked to was gone. I took emergency leave and flew home. The house felt enormous without her in it. Every room smelled like her perfume and her coffee and her quiet, relentless strength. I walked through the halls and touched the walls and tried to memorize everything before grief made it blur. The will reading was scheduled for Thursday, 2 weeks after her passing. I wore my dress uniform, blue and gold, medals aligned, shoulders straight. It was the only way I knew how to honor her, to show up as the best version of everything she had raised me to be. I arrived at the attorney's office at 9 a.m. sharp. Colonel James Whitfield was already there. He was my aunt's personal attorney and a retired Army JAG officer, Judge Advocate General. Tall, silver-haired, with a posture that said he had never slouched a day in his life. He greeted me with a firm handshake and steady eyes and told me he was sorry for my loss. There were 4 chairs arranged around the conference table. I took mine. Colonel Whitfield sat at the head. His briefcase, dark leather, brass clasps, monogrammed, sat beside him like a quiet weapon. I was calm, focused, ready. And then the door opened. I did not recognize them at first. A man and a woman, both in their late 50s, dressed in clothes that were trying very hard to look expensive. The woman had my eyes. I noticed that immediately and hated myself for noticing. The man walked with the casual confidence of someone who had never once faced real consequences. They smiled when they saw me. Wide, warm, practiced smiles that did not reach their eyes. "Laura," the woman said, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you." I felt my entire body go still. The stillness that comes before a storm. The stillness I had learned in combat, when everything inside you sharpens into one single point of absolute clarity. "You don't know me," I said. It was not a question. "We're your parents," the man said, spreading his hands like he was presenting a gift. "We've been looking for you for years." The lie was so smooth it almost sounded rehearsed, because it was. Colonel Whitfield said nothing. He simply folded his hands on the table and watched. "We're your guardians," the woman added, sliding into the chair across from me with the ease of someone who believed she already owned the room. "Family, we have every right to be here." I looked at her for a long moment. 27 years, not one phone call, not one birthday card. Not one moment of curiosity about whether the child they abandoned on a cold November doorstep had survived, had grown, had suffered, had bled, had served, had lived. And now they were sitting across from me, in a lawyer's office, wearing the word family like it was a key that could open any door. "You abandoned me," I said quietly, "when I was 3 days old." "We were young," the man said quickly. "We made a mistake, we've grown, we've changed, and we are still legally." "Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove." Colonel Whitfield's voice was calm and absolute, the kind of voice that had ended arguments in military courtrooms for 30 years. "I suggest you allow me to proceed." They settled back, still smiling, still confident. They thought they had already won. Colonel Whitfield reached for his briefcase. The brass clasps snapped open with 2 clean, precise clicks that somehow filled the entire room with silence. He removed a series of documents, organized, tabbed, deliberate, and set them on the table with the quiet authority of a man who had been preparing for this exact moment for a very long time. "Margaret Eleanor Brown," he began, "was a woman of extraordinary foresight." He looked up briefly, and I caught something in his eyes. Not sympathy, something stronger than that. Respect. She anticipated every possible challenge to her estate, every legal avenue, every claim. He paused. Every uninvited guest. The woman across from me shifted slightly in her chair. "Margaret retained my services 11 years ago," Colonel Whitfield continued, "specifically to protect this estate from individuals who might attempt to claim familial rights to assets they had no part in building and no right to inherit." He slid the first document across the table toward my parents. "This is a legally executed and court-filed deed of guardianship termination, signed by both of you, dated November 14th, 1997, 3 days after Laura's birth. In this document, you permanently and irrevocably surrendered all legal rights, claims, and responsibilities pertaining to Laura Marie Brown, including any future claim to estates, assets, or inheritances connected to her or her legal guardians." The man's smile flickered. "You signed away every right you ever had," Colonel Whitfield said simply. "Voluntarily, notarized, witnessed, filed with the county court. It has been on record for 27 years. He slid the second document across. "This is Margaret's will, executed, witnessed, and filed 18 months ago. The entirety of her estate, valued at approximately $7 million, inclusive of property holdings, business assets, and liquid investments, is bequeathed in full to Laura Marie Brown. No conditions, no contest provisions needed. The estate is ironclad." He slid the third document across. "And this," he said, his voice dropping just slightly, "is a cease and desist order, pre-drafted and ready for immediate filing, should either of you attempt to contest this will, approach Laura outside of this setting, or make any further claim of guardianship or familial rights in any legal or public forum." The room was absolutely silent. The woman's face had gone the color of old paper. The man's jaw was tight, the easy confidence drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. Their practiced smiles were completely gone now, replaced by something raw and ugly and small. They had walked in here believing that a last name and a biological connection were enough to claim $7 million from a woman they had never loved and a daughter they had thrown away. They had not counted on Aunt Margaret. They had not counted on Colonel Whitfield. And they had not counted on me. "Do you have any questions?" Colonel Whitfield asked them. Neither of them spoke. The woman looked at me once more, and I held her gaze without flinching, without anger, without the need for her to feel sorry or ashamed or anything at all. I had spent 27 years becoming someone who did not need anything from people like her. I was Laura Brown. I had been raised by a woman who loved fiercely and prepared wisely. I had served my country in places that would give most people nightmares. I had survived everything that was supposed to break me. A pair of opportunistic strangers in expensive clothes were not going to be the thing that moved me. They stood, they gathered their things, they did not say goodbye. They walked out of that conference room and out of my life with nothing, exactly as they deserved. The door closed behind them. Colonel Whitfield looked at me across the table. "Your aunt loved you very much," he said quietly. I nodded once. "She told me once," he continued, "that the best thing that ever happened to that company and to her was the day someone left a baby on her doorstep. She said it gave her something worth building for." I looked down at the documents in front of me, at my name printed clearly on line after line, at the life my aunt had spent 3 decades constructing and protecting, not just for herself, but for me. I thought about the yellow blanket, the November cold, the 3 days I had existed before being abandoned. And then I thought about every single day after that. Every lesson, every meal, every report card on the refrigerator. Every early morning she had knocked on my bedroom door and told me that excellence was not optional. Every time she had sat across from me at dinner and asked, really asked, how I was doing. She had turned abandonment into armor. She had taken a discarded child and built her into something unbreakable. And when she left this world, she made absolutely certain that no one could take that away. I walked out of Colonel Whitfield's office that afternoon into sharp October sunlight, the deed to a $7 million estate and company in a folder under my arm, my dress uniform immaculate, my medals catching the light. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment and breathed. Somewhere across the city, 2 people were driving away with nothing but the hollow embarrassment of having tried and failed to steal from a daughter they had never deserved. And I was standing here, whole, solid, mine. Aunt Margaret had given me the greatest inheritance long before she ever signed a single document. She had given me the belief that I was worth fighting for, that I was worth building for. That love, real love, shows up. It stays. It prepares. It protects even after it's gone. The money was significant. The company would take work and vision and everything she had taught me. I would carry it forward. I would build on it. I would honor every sacrifice she had ever made. But the real inheritance, it was already inside me. It had been there since the day she picked up a yellow blanket from a cold doorstep and decided, without hesitation, that this child was worth everything. I straightened my shoulders. I walked to my car, and I drove forward, the way she had always taught me to. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience, justice, and the family that chooses you. Drop a comment below. What would you have said to them in that room? Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that being left behind never determines where you end up.